Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Fatima Nicdao. She is a Catholic school leader in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, that is in California. She has served as a teacher and administrator for 15 years, earned 2 master's degrees from Loyola Marymount University. These are masters in secondary education and masters in Catholic school administration, and also a doctorate in educational leadership for social justice in 2020. She is currently the assistant principal for academic innovation and student engagement at St. Monica High School in Santa Monica, California. Her expertise ranges in academics, teaching, and learning through instructional technology, project-based learning, teacher evaluation, Apple and Google products, blended learning, STEM, 21st century learning, dual credit online learning, social emotional learning, authentic assessments, critical pedagogy, culturally relevant pedagogy, educational leadership and diversity, equity and inclusion, initiatives in school leadership. Dr. Nicdao has lived and taught in Nicaragua and India for ESL and high school curriculum. She worked at Apple Incorporated as an instructor and tech support specialist. Her dissertation, Phenomenal Women, Experiences of Women in Executive Catholic Educational Leadership in the United States, was a phenomenological study that explored the experiences of female associate assistant superintendents and superintendents in Catholic dioceses throughout the United States. She is open to collaboration on research projects and presenting research experiences and best practices. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you Dr. Nicdao. She's going to present the topic titled Phenomenal Woman, Research Study on Women in Education, in Executive Educational Leadership. We will now give the time to Dr. Nicdao.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. If I had known you were going to read it, I would have probably made it shorter. Hi, my name is Dr. Nicdao. I'm actually originally from the Philippines. I was born in San Carlos, so shout out to San Carlos, Philippines. And my mom still resides there as well. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and thank you for having me. It's about 2:15 in the morning, but I'm really happy to be here with everyone today. All right, so let's get going here. All right, so I believe everyone has a copy of it or will get a copy of it. So this was a phenomenological study on women in executive educational leadership. Here's some background. So in the United States, Catholic education has a long history from 1727 through the nuns and through the sisters, and it went through the 1900s through parochial schools, and it flourished because of the different sisters that came from different countries, Ireland, Poland, and in Italy as well. So a little bit about that. And the Vatican II Council changed everything with Catholic education. You had more people who were lay persons or not religious or priests. And then you had the Cultural Revolution that changed the landscape of vocations and even Catholicism and even the perception of religion in the United States. And so now we are in a new era of more lay leaders than persons who are in clergy or in religious orders. So just to give you a little bit of scope and understanding context, the United States has over 5,000 schools, right? Elementary, middle schools, and that's 1.2 million students. And Los Angeles is one of the biggest dioceses, I think the second biggest diocese. So a diocese is basically like a school district. If it's an archdiocese, it's a huge school district. And so I'm a product of the Catholic school system in Los Angeles from kindergarten all the way to my doctorate was a Catholic education. So I was really interested in understanding these dynamics and why I did not see many women as leaders in the Catholic school context. They were teachers, however, they were most of the time just teachers. They weren't the principals, they weren't the superintendents, they weren't the assistant superintendents. And a little bit more of context, this is the traditional ladder. You started as a teacher, or a coach, and then you go on to being a department or lead teacher, and then you go on to administration, and then you have diocesan um, leadership there. Okay. So what's the problem? As I mentioned earlier, women are overrepresented in teaching positions, but underrepresented in decision-making positions. And there's also a lack of mentoring, and you also have that the patriarchy. You know, the Catholic hierarchy is made up mostly of, well, if not all of men, in Archbishop, the Pope, everything. So these were all the different problems that I wanted to dissect and look at. I did also collaborate with the National Catholic Education Association and CEA, and saw that there was a decline actually in the female superintendents. So you can see the yellow is how many dioceses are within a region. So the United States is huge. So the red part is how many female superintendents or superintendents were in those dioceses. So you can see there's a big disparity, and there's 40% of the leadership positions were filled by females. So what's the research question? Again, it's a phenomenological study. So I wanted to see what are the experiences, success, and challenges of these female assistant superintendents and Catholic superintendents. What did they experience? Because there's always anecdotal, talk, and we feel like we know all this, but it was never really quantified, or even there's no stories about it. I looked online, very little research on how it is in these contexts. So I use these frameworks. First one was transformational leadership. I wanted to look at the different types of women and how they modeled transformational leadership, the intrinsic motivation, and also wanted to see what were their motivations, what kind of leadership styles did they have that made them successful and go all the way to the superintendency, right? And on the other side of that is Catholic social teaching. So for those of you who are not familiar with Catholic social teaching, it's basically social justice, and it's about equity, equality, diversity, everything that I believe that the world, especially after the pandemic, has been pushing through, especially in the United States. We're seeing more of representation for people of color, people who are marginalized, right? And so it's not the heteronormative kind of domination right now with even in education. You're seeing more people of color getting their doctorate degrees, such as myself, more people who are rising up to leadership positions in the United States. So here's my methodology. I know it looks simple, but I think it's my longest chapter in my dissertation. I was very proud of how I did the methodology section as well. It took a while to recruit people because, of course, it's difficult to get anyone to sit down with you for an hour and talk about their experiences, especially if these experiences were negative. And I did have some people who backed out because of fear of retaliation or being found out, even if it was all confidential. So I reached out to participants and I gave them prompts, critical narrative prompts beforehand so they could look at the questions. Afterwards, I took all of our interviews, I transcribed it on Otter, and I will talk about these things too. And then I put them through Deduce software, which I am kind of like the in-house specialist at Loyola Marymount University on how to use it. So I actually help doctoral students and graduate students who want to use this software, and because I had extensive experience with it. And I'll talk about that mostly today too. And with Deduce, I analyzed the software, and then I defended my dissertation last year. So these are my questions. What have you experienced in terms of being a woman in Catholic educational leadership? What contexts or situations have typically influenced or affected your experiences of being a woman in Catholic educational leadership? So I had 2 types of questions for transformational leadership and Catholic social teaching. And here they are. I know they're very tiny and they're very difficult to look at, but I hope this, my presentation will be available to everybody, and you could see the different critical prompts that I gave. So I had 10 women. 6 of them were labeled associate or assistant superintendent, and 4 were superintendents. So I put all their data on this software called Deduce. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it. Was relatively new at the time. And people were like, I think I'll just use Post-it notes. And I'm a very technological person. I used to work for Apple. So I was like, how can we get rich qualitative data? And Deduce is that software to use. So I took all their interviews, like I said, I transcribed it by hand, listened to it to 10 hours of interviews. I listened to it in the car. I listened to it on my drive everywhere. And I edited it down to even their intonation. So I this is what Deduce software looks like. It's about $15 a month to subscribe to. There's a discount now for students, so they made it a little bit more affordable. And so what I did was I used this software. I uploaded all the data into the software, and that's where I also transcribed it. And then that's where I saw emerging themes. So this is what the process looks like. I uploaded it on Microsoft Word. I made a code book. So if you did traditional type research, it's really like you would, I forgot what the other program that was used before, but it was very labor intensive. And so I thought this was a little bit easier for me to do. They were hand coded, and I also made memos. So these memos were able to record their tone, their body language, even the inflection, right? When people say something, they pause, you know that they want to say more, but they're a little hesitant. So I put those on the memos as well. So this is what it looks like, coding the transcript. So I took whatever they said, I would highlight it, and I'd add the code. So as you can see on the right-hand side there, I started making the codes a little bit, as I was going, I could see emerging themes, and I would add code, and I could also add a memo to it as well. Okay. So these were the memos I was talking about. So for every participant, I put an actual memo there about what they said. I said, use this quote. I was very new to it. There was really nobody in the university who was a Deduce expert. It had just come out. So I just learned as I went. And now as I'm teaching other doctoral students, I found more things to learn. They actually figured out more things, and there are more features too. And what's great about this too, by the way, is that you could have multiple researchers on the same study, and they could look through everything. And so everyone has their own user login, and they could also do the different coding. And so that actually helps with inter-rater reliability. So these were my data. So challenges. So these are all pseudonyms. And so what happened is I took their quotes, and I would code it. And so on the left-hand side, you'd see Adrienne talked a lot about challenges. She was the one who really said, these are the challenges of being a woman in executive educational leadership. While Karen, Nicole, Raquel, they didn't talk about it as much. And what's great about it is if you click on any of these participants, the quotes that were coded for challenge actually show up. So you can see them on there on the right. And that really helped a lot writing my chapter 4, because I had to do a lot of quotes and explaining them. And I had so many quotes, my chair told me to cut it down and put it in the back as a appendix. So this looks like a game of Chutes and Ladders, or Minecraft, or whatever, this old Microsoft game, but it means something. Okay, so the hotter the color, the more significant it is. So if you see to the right, there's a 20, where it says transformative leadership is 20. And you see the warmer the colors, that means there's something there. Okay, and Catholic identity, if you look at to the left, 13, 11, 12, green and red and yellow were the ones that I were looking at. If it were blue, like the cooler colors, then it would show there's not really a significance there. So again, this is exciting because, and I get excited because I'm a data nerd, but it's exciting because it increases the reliability, validity of qualitative work when you use deduce. These are some different applications I also used here. So these were my emerging themes that I coded, and it shows you in deduce how to basically what it looked like. So as you can see, the challenges were 92 here, 104 for transformative leadership. So it shows you in a really nice, in a really like succinct way to your data, your qualitative data. And this is a co-occurrence. So you could even see how different codes interact with each other. I wish I had the access to my thing, to my deduce account, but they had to freeze it. But this is basically the screenshots that I used for my dissertation defense. And it shows how different codes interacted with each other. And that also helped out with reliability and validity as well. So here's a closer shot with the code co-occurrence. So my emerging themes came from the qualitative data that I put in deduce, and these 3 things came out of it, right? Catholic identity, which is very similar to Adventist ideology, right? It's about spirituality. It's about giving greater glory to God. It's about understanding our roots in our spirituality. And how does that help inform our job as administrators? Because this is a difficult job to run a school, to run a diocese, to run a series of schools. So how do you fill your own cup while trying to fill other people's cups, as they say, right, in leadership? And the second emerging theme was recognizing the challenges. What the challenges were so many. There was compensation. There was perception of, women who are not taken seriously because of maybe the certain region. So I had participants from the East Coast, I had from the Midwest, from the South, from the Pacific Northwest. So from all regions. And if you're not familiar with the United States, there's a lot of social issues here in terms of race and gender, and a lot of misconceptions about what a woman can do and can't do in an executive role. And so the last one was transformational leadership. How did women rise above all these different obstacles? How did they basically overcome them, right? And that was the most exciting part of my research here, to see how they worked through systems that were difficult at first and thrived and increased student enrollment in their schools, or balanced the budget, or created community and culture. So I'll talk about that here. I mean, these are my subgroups that I did for my chapter 4. My chapter 4 was pretty much half of my dissertation. I wrote over 200 pages. So that's available in ProQuest, or I could get that to Dr. Arceli as well. So these were my themes: Catholic identity, prayer warriors, spirituality and faith. And what is Catholic spiritual leadership is similar to what was done earlier. We prayed together to start the meeting, right? Praying together and praying that God will bless it. And also prayer in the workplace. How does that affect what we do? And so these are some quotes that I took from them. All the women that I talked to had definitely a strong prayer or spiritual life. And they talked about not just going to church or wherever they went to get their cup filled. They went to each other too, to pray together. Oh, and here are the challenges I talked about: compensation, family, gender, communication. I remember when I was living in the Philippines, I came here when I was 4, but I remember having nannies. I remember having, access to people who could help out in the house. But when you're in the United States, you're on your own. And so when a woman usually stops whatever her career is when she has a child. And so that really was interesting, because 2 women in the cohort that I interviewed were pregnant, and they were not sure what was going to happen, being pregnant and being in their position. For them, it was a silver lining, because the pandemic helped them to stay in during the most integral part of their children's lives, right? And so these were some quotes also about challenges. People had to afford to be able to be working in these schools, and I think religious schools, it's difficult to pay sometimes, because in the United States they are not funded by the government; they're separate. So it all has to be generated through fundraising, tuition, and basically foundations. So it was like a privilege to work in this context, because if you just did this by yourself, you couldn't afford it, right? So these are some quotes here. People, my participants working so hard that they don't see their children. And one person put, as you move up in leadership, there's an unequal amount of male representation in diocesan offices. You don't see a lot of people like you. And I was always a better principal than I was a mom. And even people revealing that that men who did less than they did at the same school or context were paid more, because they were the breadwinner of their family, because they had children. So it was just a lot of disparities and challenges there too. So my favorite theme here: the call to leadership skills, collaboration, all of these things emerged from the 10 plus hours of interviews that I had. And so this ends in a positive note, right? Building relationships was the most important thing. Building trust among your team, your teachers. It said, if you look at the quotes, it's all about collaboration, right? And how you're aligned to your team. So that's it. So for my discussion, significance, so I talked to them about being women of faith, women of grit, never giving up. Even if there are pay gaps, talking about it. I think talking about salary, which has been a taboo in the past, I think that should be talked about. And also, hey, let's talk about providing childcare. And that's something that's even coming up right now in the politics in the United States. We have to have childcare for these families, right? There are less birth rates are dropping, because it's harder to have a family and to work, especially as a woman, right? Women of change, they're highly qualified. A lot of them had their doctorates. Everyone had their master's degree, absolutely, or working towards a doctorate. And so there's a higher expectation there. And so we talked about how do they even get this. One participant had 6 children, and her husband had to decide, okay, I'm going to support you. We're going to support you. I'll take care of the kids while you're finishing up your doctorate. So it's really a joint effort. And I don't think only one person was single, but she was able to manage, because it was at a different time too, in the 60s and 70s when she first started out. Some limitations, of course, is the number of participants. I wish I had more. I reached out to 71 female superintendents and a plethora of others, and I only got back a few emails. And so that's always a difficult thing, but having a more purposive sample really helped me to see what I wanted to discover in those positions. some implications. You know, women in not just Catholic ed, but I want to say in the greater context of education are ignored or passed up because of who they are as they're women. And for me, being a woman of color and in the United States, it's like a double difficulty, right? So the research offers information, calls for analysis of current structures in the different schools in the United States to create spaces for women to have an equal opportunity in diocesan roles. Theoretical implications, definitely wanted to bring up the Catholic social teaching of dignity of the worker, right? And how we need to not just talk about social justice, but live it, and really have educational leadership and social justice together in the forefront of looking at all leadership positions. I think social justice is definitely not just within a religious or spiritual context. It is now the context that we need, or the lens that we need to look at all our different positions. And women fought to participate, to have a seat in the table, one decision at a time. How am I on time, Dr. Arceli? Am I okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Yes, you can have 5 minutes more. Okay.
All right. I hope you're still with me, everybody. So implications for practice, definitely looking at different terms of canon law, but that's a really big one right there. But healthcare is what I want to push forward, and also support for families, and also reduce their covered tuition for people who are in education. My recommendations: creating a balance between pastors and principals, and looking at existing structures. And also, superintendents should not be appointed by bishops, but also a representation of all stakeholders. And this is our link to social justice. The women's representation in leadership is a matter of social justice, and we must never lose sight of the facts that leaders we are discussing are women, that doing leadership may differ for women and men, and that leadership does not take place in a genderless vacuum. So these were just some links that I wanted to show quotes I wanted to show how women in leadership is an equality issue still. And that is all. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm open to questions.
Wow, thank you so much, our Dr. Nicdao. We really appreciate your presentation. We have, actually it's just 5:39 here, so we can have like 20 minutes, Dr. Pavel and Dr. David. I would like to turn over now the time to Dr. Pavel and Dr. David. They will facilitate our question and answer. And I'm happy to introduce to you our panelist today. Our panelist is Chona Ramos. So Dr. Nicdao, Chona will ask some questions from you first, and then we will entertain questions from our audience.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe remind the audience that you may put your questions in the Q&A chat box on the right button. You can see it, so please put your question there.
Dr. Pavel, I'm sorry, I missed to introduce Maureen. Sorry, so we have two panelists, Chona Ramos and Maureen Marinas.
Excellent. So now we give time to our panelists, and then we'll go to the questions from our attendees.
Hi, Dr. Nicdao. Thank you so much for your very insightful research, and congratulations on the completion of your degree. We're happy as a woman. I'm happy that the glass ceiling on women leadership is finally broken. Though we still have challenges, but at least it has a women leadership, even in school leadership, has increased. I also had the opportunity to read the book of Grogan and Shakeshaft, and a few years ago, I remember them summarizing approaches in women leadership, and one of that is leadership on social justice. And the challenge, I think, that they presented in their book is that women leadership in schools, and the teachers the percentage is not proportional as what you've stated. And indeed, the journey of your participants is phenomenal in, the context of Catholic education. My first question is, you have a phenomenological study. Is there a specific type of phenomenology that you used in your study? Like, is it hermeneutic, transcendental, or just plain phenomenological study?
Oh, yeah, I did that on my methodology part. It was just the plain one. It wasn't hermeneutical or anything like that. Um, Sorry, it's been a while since I read my dissertation, but it was just phenomenological on the wide structure of it, though.
Okay. Thank you. Did you use a specific data analysis framework when you analyze, aside from the software? Like, was there a framework that you followed in analyzing the data, or you just use thematic analysis?
It was all thematic analysis. I was looking over it with my dissertation chair, and she said that would be the best way to do it too. Yeah.
Mhm.
I,
Okay,
yeah.
that's all right. What other sources of data did you use aside from interviews? Like, did you apply triangulation and used other sources of data?
We tried doing that, but because it was difficult because a lot of them were, from different states and different parts of the country. One of the things I planned to do originally, but I had to scale it down because of time constraints, was to observe them and to be with them in the field, going to different schools and just observing them on the field. And that was another way of doing it. But right, at that point, and also COVID had started, or it was getting there, but we just had to do interviews and also interactions with them. I also had them look at their transcript and see what, just to see any inconsistencies or if I had misunderstood anything. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, my last question, I'll give the time to Maureen. This is my last question. Were you able to um, establish the rigor of your study by following a certain framework on trustworthiness? This is the challenge we have in qualitative research when we're compared to quantitative research on reliability and validity.
Right. And so I really addressed that through deduce. And I did that through the rig. I mean, everything was addressed through deduce. And also I saw somebody put bias of my own position. I'm not a superintendent or anything of that source, but I definitely took myself out of it, right? And didn't want to have any leading questions. So my questions were vetted by my committee, and also by different people that I trusted within the institution. Those were the biggest ways to do that. And deduce also helped with uh with making it more, I don't want to say quantitative, but to validate all the data though. And just going through the transcripts over and over again, having them look through it, having like a post up interview kind of discussion about it and saying, is this what you were trying to say in this part of the interview? And so that helped a lot to
Thank
not
you so
misunderstand.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing again your study. More
Thank you.
power to you. Bless you and all of us
Thank
as we work together to educate our young people to serve God and humanity. I'll give the time to Marie now.
uh, I'm sorry. I will type the answers for the ones that I just saw popped up right now.
Maureen, you're
Oh, I'm
muted.
sorry. Yes, yes. Thank you so much for the time, Antoana. And thank you so much for your vivid and beautiful presentation of your study, Dr. Fatima. It led me to better understand the Catholic school system. I came to confirm that leaders of faith-based institutions or educational system are people of faith and of prayer. They're not only academic leaders and prime movers of all other areas of the school system. They are also spiritual leaders, which is, notable for a woman like you and me to exemplify. Congratulations on your study, Doc.
Thank
On the completion of your study. I wish to know Since your study involved 10 participants, may we please know at which number of participants did you reach the point of data saturation?
Um, can you expand on that? Like, what do you mean by like?
Um, yes, because you mentioned that one of the limitations of the study was you wished that there could have been more participants involved, whereas you already have 10 participants in the study. Usually, in other studies, 5 to 7 participants, you reach the data of saturation. Now, may we please know at which number of your participants, I mean, on the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, or the 10th, did you reach the point of data saturation?
I believe it was really at the 10th, and that's why my committee told me you could stop there and that it's okay to be at 10. They all had different backgrounds and different. I mean, I even had different ages. So, but the committee that I was working with, and they worked in Catholic ed, they worked in higher ed. They said 10 is good enough. I had 11 originally, but they said 10 was good enough. So, yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you so much. I was not able to hear clearly a while back. If how was what were done to say lessen or remove the degree of biasness, since you are a leader in an
Right.
educational system, and your participants are leaders.
Mhm. Yeah, I think having that was definitely something we talked about. And I remember my dissertation committee quite they were very rigorous, and they were telling me you put a little bit too much editorial part in this section, right? So they're like, reword that. Or it was a lot of reviewing with my dissertation committee, because it did sound biased when one of them read it. They're like, it sounds a little bit biased here, here, here. So take that out. And so really having that committee helped a lot. And my questions were really vetted a lot through the committee as well. And because they didn't want leading questions, they wanted explain, tell me more about this. So that's how I really, really tried to remove bias from that. And I put that in my chapter 4. I'm sorry, I should have read it before this, but I really tried to limit bias by a lot of reviews and having a lot of eyes look at it before I published it as well. And it even was read by the archdiocese. It was read by everybody to just look through it and see if there was any bias in it, that it was as objective as possible.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Dr. Nicdao. That's all my question. Back to you, Dr. Pavel.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nicdao, we have many questions from our attendees, and we will start with the most popular questions that have more votes. Ranjit Kingston is asking, with observation of few slides into research question and up to research questions, I understand that you have based leadership with position. How do you see certain organizations who are specific about position of women in decision-making position rather than empower them in the best of their abilities of a woman?
So I think the way I understand that question is, can leadership be separated from position, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
I tried to look at that too, and definitely see if that could be part of it. But again, my committee, my dissertation chairs wanted to see it on a more national context, executive leadership. So executive leadership was defined as being in the district office. So how do you see certain organizations who are specific about position of women in decision making? The way I understand your question is, right now, how we see executive leadership is through the title and position. I'm sorry if I'm not understanding. Making rather than empower them in the best. I don't know if it could be worded another way. I'm not understanding the last part. How do you see? Any insight on that, Dr. Pavel?
Yes, maybe we can ask Siranjit to reword it.
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding the last part. I'm so sorry. Maybe because it's
Okay,
almost
let's just move to another
Okay.
question, and then we will come back to it.
Okay.
The other question from Siranjit also about the bias control. I think you already rendered it, so we can move to some other question.
Okay.
Emmeline Joy Maglanya, what ethical issues have you encountered in your study, and how did you address them?
There weren't many ethical issues that came up. I know that some of the participants may have known about each other or knew each other because it's a small Catholic school system. Really, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but really they were asked, some of them were like, oh, who else is in the study? So I never revealed any of that stuff, but there was really no ethical concerns in the way it was done. But yeah, I remember one person was just nervous about being in it because they thought they would be retaliated against by their diocese. This was more in the southern states, and she is a person of color, so I mean, it would have been easy to finally whittle it down, but there were no real ethical issues.
I think there is a question similar to this issue, and again from Siranjit. Are the names like Adriana pseudonyms?
Yeah, they're all.
So, how did you come up with the name? There may be a possibility for such names to identify someone else.
Yeah, well, no, these names were way different from the names of the original. These are my friends and cousins, honestly. That's how I came up with the pseudonyms. So the names of the persons weren't in any of, I had to put it in my notes. And then for ethical reasons, I actually deleted and threw away and shredded everything after, and had to delete all my, because we do something called IRB. This is like the ethics part of it. Before you do any study, you do an IRB, and we had to destroy all evidence afterwards.
Good. We have another question from Dr. Alotsa Gabasiana. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Fatima Nicdao. 20% of women in Catholic educational leadership seems very small. But how does it compare nationally? As well as in other Christian denominations. Second, the Catholic Church is very well known for its social teaching, which is good. How has this teaching impacted non-Catholic educational institutions compared to the Catholic ones?
That's a good question. Actually, it was 40% of women in Catholic educational leadership as a superintendent. So nationally, that's how it's been. So at the time of the study, 40% of the superintendents in the United States were women. In the national average, I think it's about 50-50 right now. So the Catholic, I don't know, I don't really have any knowledge on how it is in other Christian denominations, but in the United States, the other Christian denominations operate as independent schools. So they're more like, they're not as united as the Catholic school system. If we could understand that, like I know AIS is a Seventh-day Adventist, and there's a a big consortium of your schools, but in the United States, that hasn't really been a big presence in education. And how does this teaching impact non-Catholic? I'm not sure, because I'm not familiar with non-Catholic educational institutions, because they're so scattered and independent. So like different churches, like let's say a Baptist church is different from another Baptist church. There's no uniting district from that, because they're so separated and they're all over, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another question from Shane Reisani. It is interesting from the other part of the world. Hi, Shane Tajraisani here. I am interested to know your point of view regarding the extension of the study in Pakistan and Madras, religious schools in Pakistan, well, and all over the Central Asia. What would you recommend me to add or subtract from your study?
Well, first of all, that's awesome. I'm really glad you consider that. I would first I would make make a decision on what you want. What is your goal, right? And if the context of it is still applicable. I think I would definitely I would add to it. I mean, if you want to see how the teachers are or leadership are in religious schools in Pakistan, I would definitely take into account the culture and really see what the perceptions are first. And it's kind of a difficult one. It was a difficult line for me to not be to be too much into bashing the patriarchy because I mean that's basically what is causing a lot of different turmoil, right? The patriarchal system and kind of like that whole thing of like women can't do this and that. So I think I would also take into account what is Pakistani culture and where's the woman's place in that, right? And being sensitive to those things. So that's what I would do and look because it's more liberal in the United States, of course. And if that's like the most liberal and progressive part of it, and it's been difficult, I can only imagine other contexts.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
We have question on motivation from Angelina Argoles. Dr. Nicdao, what is the motivation for this research?
Well, you know, my doctoral chair taught us our first day. He's like, a lot of research is me search, right? And I wanted to look at that time. I was, you know, I was an assistant principal, and I was like, well, where are all the leaders? Where are the mentors? I have to like do all this myself. I've been, you know, like basically begging for scraps of mentorship from different people, and I finally figured out, okay, I'm going to go now and look at the top people, the people who are superintendents, the people who are there. And so that was really the biggest motivation for me to learn. Do I want to be a superintendent after this? No, I don't. It's a difficult job. And, but it's definitely was an eye-opening experience. And I also started to get my own mentoring coach. I hired a mentoring coach, a nationally renowned one. So I did it was a lot of self-reflective stuff too. That was my motivation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We have many questions. I hope we will cover some still. Dr. Arceli, do we have some time more? Or
I could type in my answer for them.
Yes, yes. For the rest, yes. But still, we can.
Dr. Pavel, we can have 6 minutes more. Okay. And then Dr. Nicdao David and you can instruct Dr. Nicdao how to respond to those questions that cannot be answered.
I see a Q&A. I could type my answer for them.
Sure.
Yes, yes. You can type it there. But since Dr. Arceli is going to speak right after this, I will be dismissing the unanswered questions. So if you want to answer them, you should look at the dismissed button. Then you answer them there. Yeah. Okay. So this is so that the questions will not get mixed. The questions that are for you and the questions that are for Dr. Arceli. Because
but you can go ahead and maybe ask 3 more questions.
Yes. Okay. We can still cover some.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question from Saranjit. How did you balance between the richness of data collected and identified with the guidance of your committee to leave because it sounded biased?
I think that was the biggest part of having a committee, right? Mm-hmm. And there were different perspectives. So having a diverse committee, so I had one committee member from UCLA who was very much from the public schools, but then later came into Catholic schools. So she helped provide that balance, right? And different perspectives. Another one was in Catholic education the whole time. Another one is working with public and charter. So having all those different perspectives really helped balance that. And also having the Catholic perspective, the Catholic school perspective. She's now the leader of basically all the different higher ed programs in Catholic education. So so I was really selective with my dissertation committee. And so I really recommend that for everyone too.
Yes, good. From Sir Shakal Sibala, thank you for so much for a great presentation. Did you receive any pushback from the Catholic education leadership?
I didn't actually, and funny enough, I was approached by the National Catholic Education Association, and they want to use my study to form the standards and benchmarks for Catholic educational leadership now. So they're using my study on a national basis to see what should be in a leader, because I think my study was the only study that they could find that was only focused on women.
That's great.
Yeah.
Another question from Jennifer Operio. Your dissertation is very interesting. I would like to know if you have considered the glass cliff theory as one of the challenges in women leadership in Catholic educational institutions.
I didn't really come across that one. It was the stained glass theory, or within churches or within religious institutions where you have that glass ceiling. So it was a stained glass ceiling, but I didn't have much familiarity with glass cliff theory.
Yeah.
I will look into that though.
From Nestor Luis, how do the results of the study helps the educational system?
I think it definitely is now shedding a light. It came in the time of the emergence of social justice issues in the United States, and seeing that there's basically, disparities and inequalities within education systems, and seeing that why are only white men, doing all the decision making. So I believe that would help in that, especially in the Catholic system, in the Catholic educational system. I'm seeing more diversity now in speakers, in people who are presenting in our professional development. It's no longer, the same old people who've always been there. It's people of color. I see someone who looks like me. And that has been a huge deal in the United States. You want to see people who look like you up in those places, right? I mean, for my students, I'm probably one of the first women of color that they've seen with a doctoral degree. Right. And I also worked in the harsher areas of Los Angeles. And if that is happening in Los Angeles, imagine other places. So, yeah.
Dr. Pavel and David.
Yes.
Yes, it's now time.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Yes.
I will leave my information with Dr. Arceli. So if anyone wants to reach out to me for anything, please let me know. I'm happy to help out. Okay, so yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Nicdao. So we are done with our question and answer, and AQRA is very pleased to give the certificate of recognition to Dr. Fatima Nicdao for being our speaker today and for sharing her study, Phenomenal Woman Research Study on Women in Educational Leadership. Dr. Nicdao, please accept our expression of appreciation for your kindness, for being part of our community. We are a big community, Dr. Nicdao, like more than 5,000 members. And even though not all of the members are able to join during our virtual events, but we share the material so they can access. We have a big and growing number of scholars here in Asia who are interested in doing qualitative research. And this afternoon, you have just inspired us and shown us a sample how it is to do a rigorous qualitative research study. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll definitely join AQRA.
Yes, please. We will be very much honored to have you. And also to our panelists, to Maureen, Marinas, thank you for serving as our panelist today, and also to Chona Ramos. And we are very pleased that you can initiate the discussion. What we like about AQRA is that through all these months that we have been doing the virtual events, we can see growth in the engagement, and we like it. Can you imagine questions more than 20 plus those asked by our panelists? There is engagement, interaction going on, and it's very cordial, it's very tactful, it is sincerely seeking to know. So this is the kind of spirit that we hope will continue. So to Dr. Nicdao, to Maureen, and to Chona, thank you very much. And to all of you, our participants, thank you for asking really relevant questions today. So now I give the time to Dr. Pavel to give the introduction.
We will now move to our second presentation for tonight, and I'm very pleased to welcome our own AQRA president, Dr. Arceli Rosario, as a spokesman for the second part. She is a chair of education for the Department of Education in IAS Graduate School, and also the AQRA president. And she's also an excellent researcher. I would also, from my personal experience, I would say it's a great pleasure for us to work together as a team in AQRA, and also to conduct some studies together. So I'm happy to present and to introduce you to Dr. Arceli Rosario this evening. So please help me welcome Dr. Arceli to be our speaker now. And the study, by the way, is about photo voice, which is so also interesting. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to invite our, I think Gabby is not here anymore. She is my tutor when it comes to Z-things. But okay, I think I will stop presenting first. I need to, now my challenge is, how do I share? Why is it I cannot copy paste my Z-things? I am using Z-things. So I would like to invite our participants to join me. You go to your browser. I'm going to type here in the chat box. All right. I will type here in the chat box. By the way, Dr. Nicdao, you can read that in the chat box, the appreciation of our participants. They have expressed their thank yous. You may not have noticed while you were presenting or while you were answering the questions. Okay, so I will now send to all of you my Z-things. Okay, and then you go there, you copy paste, and you go to your browser. Okay, this is the one. Have you seen that? What you will do is you, okay, by the way, I think so many, so that it's now up. All right, I will type again. By the way, Dr. Pavel, you are seeing my settings?
Yes, I'm opening.
So what you will do is you copy this, and then you go to your browser and paste in the URL bar, and then you type enter, okay? And then when you type enter, you will be able to see my Z-things. Okay, so I hope you are there. Dr. Pavel, are you there? Oh, I can see several of you there.
Just,
but I hope
you are still off air.
Yeah, I'm still off air. Okay, what I will do is I will now start presenting so you can see. All right, so I have now started my presentation. So the others, maybe you would like to go there. I will repeat, copy the www.zthings.com/Arceli Rosario, which I posted in the chat box. And then you go to your browser, you paste it in the URL bar, and then just click enter. All right, so we will now start. Our study is the presentation is titled Designing a Photo Voice Study. Perhaps you have heard about this design. I have a question here, and I want you to respond either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The question is, actually, this is not a question. This is a statement, and I want you to agree or disagree. Community members can identify and solve their own problems. All right, respond now. Wow, wonderful. We have 38 responses, 44, 48, 50. So AQRA researchers are very techy. You are here. Let us see what's our answer. Wow, 97% agree and 3% say no. Okay, so when we do photo voice, the assumption or our philosophical orientation is that we believe that community members, whether they are educated or not, whether they are in the rural or in the urban, whether they are young or old, we begin with that philosophical orientation that community members can identify and solve their own problems at the same time. So two things that community members can identify, they know what their problems are, and that they can solve their own problems. So that is our philosophical orientation, okay? So what is photo voice? Photo voice is a qualitative research design. It is arts-based. Why? Why is it arts-based? Because the data, the main data is photos, and it is considered as arts. And the other one is it is a participatory action research. So there are two big words here, participatory. Why? Because the community members participate. So those who participate are engaged in identifying their problems and in solving their problems, meaning problem generation, problem identification, solution generation. These two functions emanate from the community. That's why it is called participatory. Another, it is action research. What is the principle of action research? Meaning there is a change after the research, right? So the third description is it is an empowering methodology. As I said, it begins with that orientation that community members are able. When we say able, that means we are empowering, okay? So this methodology empowers those who are involved to reflect and upon their strengths and their concerns. I want to underscore that when we do photo voice, we do not focus only on the problem, we also focus on strength. So it's not only problem, because the community may not have a problem, all problems. The community may also have strengths. And we can also, in doing photo voice, we can also highlight or celebrate the strengths of the community. So this is the definition of photo voice. It is a process by which people can identify, represent, and enhance their community through a specific photographic technique. It entrusts cameras to the hands of people to enable them to act as recorders and potential catalysts for social action and change in their own communities. It uses the immediacy of the visual image and accompanying stories to furnish evidence and to promote an effective participatory means of sharing expertise and knowledge. Photo voice started or was introduced by Caroline Wang and Mary Ann Boris. They did a seminal study that was the first study ever, at least as far as I know, which is recorded. They did this study about the reproductive health of rural women in the Yunnan province in China. They were from the US, but they went to China to do the study on rural women, and they got 62 participants in 2 areas, 2 research sites, and they conducted the study for 1 year. I'm referring to the data collection. So the data collection was for 1 year. And what they did was they entrusted cameras to the participants, to each participant, 1 camera to each participant. And during those years, they did this study in the early 1990s. During those years, there was no digital camera, I think, because the participants used the film. Do you remember? Those of you who maybe are like already teenagers maybe or adults in the early 1990s, maybe you remember that during this time, photographers used the 36-roll film. And so they entrusted 1 roll to their participants, each participant 1 roll each month. And then they asked the participants to take pictures, to use the 36 films, shots for 1 month. And then they developed the pictures, and then the participants chose, I think, 1 or 2 pictures to present in their focus group discussion. In their earlier publications, Wang and Boris called their design as photo novella, but later they called their design as photo voice. All right, so here's again, I will need your participation. Do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Pictures or images have the power to teach. What do you think? Okay, let us answer this and let us see. Okay, we have 3 responses. Come on. Okay, now 15, 21, 25. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Few more seconds. All right, we have now 56, and let us see what we think. Wow, it's 100%. Yes, this is true. According to the principle in photo voice, pictures or images can influence policy. According to Wang and Boris, when leaders in the community and those who have the power to make decisions are confronted with pictures, I mean, they see pictures face to face, they cannot negate that there is a problem and something has to be done. All right, so images, the key concepts of photo voice are the following. Images teach, pictures can influence policy, community members must be involved in shaping policy. You see, sometimes those who make policies are those who are in the top, and the voices of those who are below are not heard. For example, we teachers, we make decisions, but we do not consult our students who are recipients of the policy that we formulate. The idea behind Photo Voice is that those who are involved in the problem should become part in the generation of the solution. Number 4, policymakers and key people must value the voice of community members. And then social change can happen through individual and community action. All right, so the individual must act and the community must act to bring about social change in the community. The philosophical frameworks that guide Photo Voice are empowerment education. Perhaps you have heard of Paulo Freire. His concept started in schools, and then today we have like teachers as a guide in the side, in contrast to the teacher as a sage on the stage. So this was the contribution of Paulo Freire, that students, even though they are young, maybe children, or maybe we say they are not very intelligent, but we value them and we give them an opportunity to participate in decision making. The other one is feminist theory, because this started with women. Wang and Boris said that reproductive issue is a woman issue. Hence, women should have a voice on matters that concern them. And the other one is documentary photography, which says that photography or photos can capture the reality and can inform policy. All right. So the data sources, the main data sources of Photo Voice are photos and the narratives behind the photos. So we don't stop just on the photos. There are stories behind the photos, and the researchers' goal is to hear the stories behind the photos. Wang and Boris call this as storytelling, the time when participants tell about the meaning of the photos. They call this phase as the storytelling time. Wang and Boris proposed a 4-phase design, 4 phases. And these 4 phases begin with preliminaries. Preliminaries does not fall in the 4 phases, but this is the beginning, meaning these are the steps that researchers should do when they want to conduct a Photo Voice study. First, they must conceptualize the problem. They define goals and objectives. They decide on the methodology. They look for funding. Now, maybe you will ask, why is that a step for Photo Voice? Well, you as researchers may need some funds, especially for to secure the cameras. But if you say, well, during this time, we don't really need to buy cameras. We don't need to issue cameras to our participants. Well, there may be instances when your participants have already the cameras. But if you study groups like maybe ethnic tribes or communities that do not have cameras, then you have to provide them, because giving your participants a camera is part of empowering them. It is an empowering act. To have a camera is to have power. That's what Wang and Boris said. Then, of course, you select the research site, and then you create an advisory committee. I cannot explain to you fully now why and how to choose, but we have a chapter in a forthcoming book to be published by Sage, Dr. Carmela, and my daughter and I wrote a chapter on photo voice, and we discussed these steps here. You may want to read that and learn more about these steps, then set a selection criteria of the participants and then recruit the participants. For example, my colleagues and I did a study on teen motherhood. This is a community issue. This is a social issue. So we decided to study this. And our research questions were the following. And if you see, this is while we use photo voice, we merge it with phenomenology. You see here, the kind of questions we are asking are actually phenomenological questions. For example, what is it like to be a teen mother? Meaning, what are the lived experiences of teen mothers? What conditions impact their plight as teen mothers? If you look at closely the research questions of Dr. Nicdao, she asked these kind of questions, right? She asked about the context of the experiences. And we asked a third question: how do teen mothers view their lives in the future? And we have two themes for the photo taking. One is, the first theme is my everyday life as a teen mother. We asked them to capture their everyday life as a teen mother. And then we asked them to take photos of what they view their life would be in the future. I want to give you also another example. Janina Petri, our student here at IAS, who comes from Romania. At one point of her study, she went home to Romania and she asked her university if she could conduct a photo voice study. She asked, so she and her university agreed. She asked her participants to take 2 sets of photos. The first theme was, what do I like about my university? And the second theme was, what are my dreams for my university? And then, she held a photo exhibit, and the photos were displayed in a strategic place in the university. And the provost of the university said, let the photos remain there, and the following year you do a study again, because we want to see if the dreams that our students said, the pictures that they say, these are our dreams for our university. The provost said, we want to know if these dreams have been materialized. So it was a very powerful way, you see. So Janina is now in her university, and I am excited to hear from her if about the result of her second photo voice. So I believe many of you are coming from the school setting, maybe from elementary, high school, or college. You can do this. And maybe perhaps you are thinking right now, I cannot do it because I am teaching first grade or I'm teaching second grade. We conducted a training, a photo voice training in one school. And you may not believe, one group took first grade pupils as their participants. Of course, they accompanied them because we were scared they would climb stairs, they would be going somewhere. The researchers accompanied their participants and the first grade pupils. And we asked, these kind of questions. And it was so enlightening what the students, dream for their school. So this is one application of photo voice. So this is the first step. This is phase 1, where during this phase, we do the following activities: orientation. This is the time we orient our participants about what photo voice is. We also train them how to use the camera, and we also train them how to take photos and also how to address some ethical issues. And then we give them the theme of the photo taking, and then we send them for photo taking. And during this time also, we conduct periodic formative evaluation, like we ask our participants what difficulties they encounter. Here, I want to show to you one picture from the study of Wang and Boris. The theme was the spirit of the everyday life of the rural women who were farmers in China. The women were farmers. So the participants were, I mean, not all, but the participants of Wang and Boris were farmers. And this was one picture that the participants took. Maybe she asked somebody to take a picture of herself. She was hoeing the cornfield. And at the same time, she had her baby. You can see the baby there. So it's a very powerful picture about the reality of the participants in relation to the phenomenon. Okay, and now we have here the third phase is, this is the time that the participants select the photos. And in our case, I conducted some photo voice studies. We always limit on 5 best photos. We ask our participants to take as many photos and then choose the best 5 photos. So the first step here is photo selection. The participants, by the way, we pair our participants. As other researchers did not do this, but my colleagues and I, we decided to pair our participants because we want the conversation, the dialogue, to start even from the decision what photos to take and what photos to select, and also what do these photos mean. So there is already a dialogue between the partners, plus the dialogue that happens during the photo presentation, because the photo presentation happens in a focus group, either with a cluster of participants or with the whole participants. And then also, my colleagues and I, we added observation as part of our data collection. We also conducted in-depth interviews. We wrote analytic memos, observation notes, methodological notes, and we wrote the stories of each participant. And for the data analysis, aside from our own analysis of the data, we also asked our participants to analyze the photos, their photos, and we call this process as photo essay. I want to show to you one picture, and here I'm showing that every picture should have a caption and a title. So in this case, the upper part set of words there, this is the caption. And the title of the picture is the Makahia. Makahia, that's the plant that is being photographed here. But this is a kind of plant that is very sensitive to touch. Once it is touched, then it shrivels. In this case, our participants took this picture. I did this with Arceli Joy Aguilion. I know she is here right now. She is among the attendees. And we took this, this study was with young people, youths who experienced Yolanda. If you remember, the Philippines was hit by a very strong typhoon, I think in 2013. And so we went 2013 or 2014. I'm not very sure now, but we went to one of the schools in central Philippines where the typhoon was at its strongest. And one of our participants took this picture of the Makahia plant. And so that's the title of the picture. And the caption is, we should not be like the Makahia. We should not accept only the good things that come to us and be happy and thankful. But when bad times happen, we shrivel and sulk from God. So that is the picture caption. So for the picture, there is the title of the picture, and there is also a caption for every picture. And here's another one. There's also a title, and there's also a caption. As you see here, the participant took a flower. It turned out in the photo that the rest were black and white, and the rest was black and white. It's only the the flower that is that turned out to be colored. And the participant said he did not do this intentionally, but it turned out that way. But it says that a person may see what is bare, what is withered, but he can choose to look for something beautiful. And the title is The Pink Flower. Here, this is a picture from the study of Mitchell and colleagues. The title is Giving a Face to HIV and AIDS. And here, the storytelling, this is now the storytelling or the interpretation of the picture using the SHOWED framework, SHOWED. And let me read here. So what do you see? Empty desks in a classroom. What is really happening here? Many desks are empty because many students are either dying or dead because of AIDS. How does this relate to our lives? This is our reality. It affects all of us. Why does this problem exist? This problem exists because of many reasons, such as unsafe sexual practices, abuse of women, etc. What can we do about it? Let us educate ourselves. In the next slide, I'm showing you here the SHOWED framework. So SHOYED, that is SHOWED. All right. So this is a framework that you can use to help your participants tell the stories behind the pictures, okay? And I don't know if we have time. Maybe we can do this for 3 minutes. Let us try this one. I'm showing you this picture. Look at this picture very carefully. And then we are going to do a group activity. So we will do breakout session. You will have your roles. So 3 of you in the group, or maybe more. And then you will give a title to the photo. You will give a short caption to the photo, and you will analyze the photo using the SHOWED framework. I will go back, look at the picture very clearly. Focus on the picture. Okay. And then here, maybe you want to take a picture of this one, a screenshot of this, if you like, for your convenience. And then, David, we will now go to the breakout session.
Yes. We cannot do breakout sessions because this is a webinar. This is not.
I see. All right. Okay, I understand. So we cannot do a breakout session. I wished we could, but David, are you seeing my slide?
No, I'm not seeing it.
You are not seeing it. Okay, let me do it again. All right. Thank you for the info. All right. I hope this time, yes?
Yes.
Is it there? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, let us look at this picture. And if we analyze this one using maybe, so what's the title? Maybe I will title this The Garbage Dump. That's not very strong, but for now, that's what I can think. And then we can put a picture. Maybe we can say this is, a caption, this is a garbage dump in the community and everybody is coming here, and so on. And now we will answer, what do you see? Well, maybe we'll say a garbage dump. What is happening in the photo? Then you can explain. In this community, there is no proper garbage disposal system, and so everybody, they dump their garbage here, and there is no segregation of biodegradable and non-biodegradable, etc. You can say that. How does this photo relate to our lives? Then you will say, well, it means so much to us as a community because this affects our health and our environment and on and on. So why does this problem or strength exist? Maybe you will say like, because we are not properly oriented, we have not adopted proper garbage disposal practices, etc. How can we be empowered? Then you say here some strategies to empower the community members. What can we do about this? And there's this explanation. So that is how we interpret the photo using the showed framework. And then phase 3, I think I made a mistake in the previous one. It should be phase 2. Phase 3 is disseminating findings. One big event here is the photo exhibit that is done in the community. And then, of course, the researchers can present their findings in research conferences. And then, of course, publication. Here is an example of a photo exhibit program, because sometimes researchers ask, so how do we do the exhibit? What parts? So this one will give you an idea. We will share to you this PowerPoint and you will see how you can modify this one, but these are the parts that we include in our photo exhibit. I'm showing you here a picture of a photo exhibit conducted by my daughter. She is Dr. to the Barrios here in the Philippines. She was assigned to one municipality in Mindanao, a remote municipality, and people there had issues with hypertension. So she did a photo voice study on hypertensive patients, and she presented this photo exhibit in the municipality. She had 54 participants covering 14 barangays or villages. And this photo exhibit was done in the municipality. And so these were pictures mounted by barangay, okay? And then she also printed in the tarpaulin pictures arranged according to the themes. And this tarpaulin was placed in a very strategic place in the municipal hall building, so that even after the photo exhibit, people who come can see this and can be informed of the findings. And the last phase is advocating policy. This is the time when, from the findings, researchers with policymakers propose, design, implement policies. One of the policies that resulted from the study of my daughter is this policy which is hypertension and diabetes clubs, formation of hypertension and diabetes club in every barangay. The other one was, she called this as PUSO. This is an acronym in Visayan language, but it is about how the community should come together to address hypertension and diabetes. I'm showing you here some examples of photo voice studies done in Asia. I know some of our participants mostly are coming from Asia. You can look at these studies, and these studies are available in Google Scholar and in other platforms. And yeah, I would like to ask you, are you interested to use photo voice? Okay, please give a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Let us see. Okay, you take your vote now. All right, let us see what I am not seeing how many are voting here. I'm sorry. But we have 100%. Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I cannot tell how many. I cannot see the responses. And now this is our last. I want to ask you, after hearing about photo voice, maybe you've heard about it earlier before, but now after this presentation, how would you describe it as a research design? Okay, can you answer? All right, we have 2 responses here, 5. Okay, great, wonderful. Let us see. Aha, participatory, interesting, very interesting. It's novel, new, yes. It is empowering and fun. I agree with you. It is fun. It is really fun. And I'm so happy that you are interested and maybe you want to know more. But this one, wow, many more are responding. Yes, very good. Thank you. And I think we have the same themes coming up. Yes, it is very interesting. And what I like best about this one is the social change that it can bring. So, you know, oftentimes we researchers, especially those of us who are in the academe, some of us may like, we are very happy when we publish something that is true, and that is good. But I think for me, the highest reward as a researcher is when our research is able to bring about change in individual lives and in the lives of people in the communities. I would like to share with you that when we were doing a photo voice study with Dr. Dumokmat, she is our panelist. I will introduce her shortly. When we're doing a photo voice study and our participants were coming to the photo exhibit, one of us, our research team member, she told me, "Mom, look, she walks like a queen." She was referring to our participant who was, of course, a teen mother. And you know that teen mothers, sometimes they are embarrassed of their situation. But at that moment, when we had the photo exhibit, one of our research team members recognized that our participant walked like a queen. Yeah, so we are valuing people, we are honoring people, we are empowering communities. So you see here, you are seeing now our word cloud. What is coming is interesting and empowering, and we got 65 responses. Thank you so much. I will now turn over the time to Dr. Pavel, but before that, I would like to introduce our panelist today. She is Dr. Carmela Dumokmat. She has been my, co-researcher in some projects, and until now we continue to collaborate. As I said, she is also a co-author in that chapter to be published by SAGE.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arceli. This was very interesting, and we enjoy. I hope all of us we enjoyed this newly introduced design, and we all are eager to try it and to learn it ourselves and to use it for our data collection. So today we have first Dr. Carmela will ask questions from as a panelist, and then we will move to our attendees' questions. So Dr. Carmela, time is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rosario, for your presentation. I know that many researchers who are particularly interested in arts-based research are looking forward to this kind of presentation. Well, I have some questions about photo voice. First, there are some research studies that use pictures as their data collection method. How can we differentiate photo voice from these kinds of research studies?
Yeah. I mentioned about arts-based data. And with arts-based data, in fact, arts-based data has also 3 types of data, like arts in research, arts, research about arts, so different types. In photo voice, photos are used as data, but this is not, the focus is not on the artistic quality of the picture. The focus is on the reality, capturing the reality, and also the storytelling behind the picture. I just want to emphasize that, Mel. But your question is, does every research design that uses photo as data considered as photo voice? Well, there may be some scholars who may say that can be done, but my stand is no, because photo voice as a research design is anchored in philosophical frameworks. And I want to emphasize the empowerment education. And that is always to empower. So to begin with, researchers have that philosophical framework in mind, that they want to empower people. So that should be the beginning of it, because photo voice, you are giving voice to the marginalized groups, those who cannot participate in decision making. Now, maybe you will ask, so who are these marginalized? Who are these voiceless? Well, commonly we say women. That's why Wang and Boris started with women. Maybe in some societies, women have a voice, but there are still societies that women need to speak, need to be heard. Children also, and in the school setting, students, yes, there may be some schools where decisions are made only by administrators, by maybe teachers, but students are recipients only of policies. They do not have a voice. So I'm saying it should begin with a philosophy that you want to empower the marginalized. So you may ask, so then how do we call research designs where photos are used as data? Well, there are designs like narrative inquiry. In narrative inquiry, you can use photos because you are after understanding the life of a person, and the person may show you photos about his or her life. So in narrative inquiry, yes, you can also do photos. And even in case studies, Mel, in case studies, you can also include photos there, just to show to, when you publish or when you present, you say, this is the reality of my participants.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arceli, for clarifying that. And I believe because now that we have already opened the mind of some of our novice researchers, and they might be confused when they will go and read some literature. And since there are some research studies that have used photo voice as the title, even in the title of the research studies, but when you go into their methodological section, you will see that, oh, they are not really actually using the photo voice design. They are only using pictures and photos in their research studies. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosario. Now, I would like also to ask, based on your experience, what are the most common ethical issues that you have encountered, and what advice can you give to our researchers who would like to use photo voice?
There are many, and we do not have time to expand each one of them. I think the most common is in the use of photos. So let us begin with that. Always orient the participants. What is the proper way to take photos, who to photograph? But there are ways we can, address this one. Firstly, the researchers will give orientation on ethics in taking pictures. So that can be addressed. And also, the researchers will guide the participants to secure consent from people that they take picture of. So there is a consent form. So several consent forms. Consent form for the researchers, participants to participate, that's a consent form. But there's also a consent form for people that are photographed. And in the consent, you also include there that they also agree that their photos will be published or will be presented during photo exhibit, because in the photo exhibit, wow, the community goes, everybody in the community goes there, and those who are photographed should know that their photographs will be exhibited. And another safeguard is because before the photo exhibit, in the photo presentation, community leaders are also invited, and they may come. And there's the advisory committee, and these people will help the researchers and even the participants to make the decision whether the photos are appropriate for presentation. So these are some safeguards.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arceli. May I still have one last question, Dr. Pavel? Okay. So perhaps many would like to ask, since we will be having some photo interpretation, photo presentation and interpretation, and then we'll have photo exhibit, how would we know that this is already, we have reached already the data saturation?
That's a good question. I think just like with other designs, you know that, well, by the way, let's introduce two terms here, the theoretical saturation and the thematic saturation. For thematic saturation, it's like the theme is repeating, like many photos are coming. And we found this, I mentioned to you that we did a photo voice training in Davao City, and we divided the participants of our training into several groups. And then each one of them conducted, because we were in one school, so we just used the students in that school. So one group took grade 1, another group grade 3, another group grade 6, another group, you know. And what was interesting there was that almost in every group, the same what they like in their school, the same, even the grade 1 identified the same things that the higher levels also identified. And when it came to what their dreams, even the grade 1 also identified the same one. So we said, yeah, we got thematic saturation. But always, maybe you'll ask, so how many? Well, always begin with not so many, because it's difficult to manage. And if you have like 10 participants and you have 2 sets of pictures, 5 pictures for each theme. So for each theme, 10 participants, 5 times 10, already 50, another theme, another 50. So you already have 100 pictures. We'll be dealing with 100 pictures. So unless really, but you know, my advice, if there's really a picture that is unique, then just treat it as a negative case and make an analysis of that picture. Treat it as a negative case, okay?
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosario.
There's a question about what other saturation, did I get it right? The theoretical saturation, which is the focus of grounded theory.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arceli. You know, you just answered several of questions from the Q&A box. But so we will continue now, and we have a question from Lorenzo Miguel Buenaflor. Magandang araw. Thank you, Dr. Arceli, for your presentation. Very intelligent and organized. My question is, can we consider photo voice in conducting online research? I am a research teacher and I want to use it for the next academic school year.
It's very interesting. I think we have an AQRA, one of our AQRA mentors, if you remember Dr. Anna Cohen-Miller, she has, I think, done, Mel, am I right? She has done photo voice online. Yeah, I think she is writing or has published, I'm not sure, but we are having a conversation, and yes, you can do it. You can do photo voice online, and you can do photo exhibit online as well.
Yes. Our next question from Dr. Alotsa Gabasiane. Thank you, Dr. Arceli Rosario, for this informative presentation. 1. What negative critique in photo voice research scholarship do you expect to encounter, and how do you respond to those? And 2nd, how would you provide protection, for example, from litigation for a participant who eventually finds herself in trouble with the photos that she took for this research?
Let's address the second question first, because it seems like we're just continuing our previous conversation. I would say if researchers do the study properly with proper permission from the community leaders, involving community leaders in deciding which photos to include in the photo exhibit, and also working very closely with the advisory committee, then this problem about being in trouble can be avoided. And about negative critique in photo voice, yes, I think every design has a limitation. I will ask Dr. Carmela to respond to this one. Mel, do you remember what we wrote there in the limitations of photo voice?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, would you like to speak about this one? Limitations or major criticisms on photo voice?
Let me review. Let me remember.
All right.
I don't remember at this time, ma'am.
Okay. I think one of those is that it is very tedious and attrition rate, Dr. Gabashani, is very high. Like in our experience, we did a study with Dr. Dumokmat. At first, Mel, I remember we had like more than 10 participants as nominated by the Rural Health Unit Officer, because we're looking for teen mothers. Then we got 10. Then, you know, dropping, until eventually in the photo exhibit, we had only 4. You know why? Because it's like the intensity, having the orientation, taking the picture, and doing the, what is this one? The photo presentation. And you do the photo presentation several times. And then they come together to do the photo essay and then the photo exhibit. So it is very intensive. Another, Dr. Gubashani, is it is expensive because even if you say, well, the participants, we do not need to buy, to give them camera, but the snacks, you know, every time you meet with your participants, we have the snacks. And since we dealt with teen mothers, one of us should babysit. Can you imagine that? The children and the snacks, including the children and our participants as well. And during the photo exhibit, another snacks, because where we are, I think it's very important always to have snacks, to have food. That's part of our culture. And it's our way of saying thank you to our participants.
Yes, thank you. There is a follow-up question from, I think it's not a follow-up, actually, it's another question from Dr. Lotza. Do you see potential in using narrative inquiry with photo voice research as a mixed method? I think it's not really mixed, but it's a blend of 2 designs in order to get results for social action.
Yes, yes, you can do this, especially, for example, you want to, shall we say, you want to do a narrative inquiry on, I don't know, but as of now, I'm just thinking about what marginalized groups do we want to study about? And we want to study about their whole lives. Or, okay, since you are coming from schools, I'm now thinking about working students. You do a narrative inquiry with working students. They are marginalized. Sometimes they are not treated properly. We do not have the, we need to come up with policies, you know, to give them a better life, to address their concerns. So narrative inquiry, because we are interested to study their life, it's focusing on a certain aspect of their life. It's either from childhood until the present or during the 4 years of study in college, maybe. And then we ask them to take pictures to capture their reality. Yes, that can be done. But it should focus on social action, on coming up with policies to help this marginalized group. Dr. Pavel, I'm sorry, you know, it's already 7:05, so I think we should go.
We have many questions still coming in, and there are some requests for training on photo voice.
Yeah, I think, you know, Dr. Pavel, David, we have been thinking of doing that, right? I think it's time for us to do that. Yes, we will plan to do that. It's a 2-day training, and we will see how we will look at our schedules, how we can do that. But thank you for letting us know of the interest. We will capture your questions, those that have not been addressed. And next meeting, we will spend time to answer these questions before the presenters. Okay, so I think I need to share our screen because we have some kindly stay with us if you still have a little time. But if not, then maybe you can leave. We just want to thank you for joining us today. So we are done with our question and answer. Thank you very much, Dr. Carmela. So Dr. Pavel, so to save time, here's a certificate for myself and certificate for, for Dr. Carmela. Mel, thank you so much. And now this is a special event. I hope Dr. Saban is already here.